Good morning, it's Saturday the 26th. What is that, 9:45? And I finally crawled into the garage here so I could start doing some work. I only got a half a day to work today, or just a few hours actually. I'm going to Orlando for a birthday party. So, see the scratch I put on there? I'm going to trim this a little bit, and how I did that is, as you can see right here, there you go. This one's got a lot of overhang, so I just use my scribe, my O-ring tool, or awl, whatever you want to call it, tool, and gave it a good scratch. Freaking iPhone, man. God dang. There we go. So we're going to give these a little bit of a trim, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some ratchet straps. I think I'll probably just put one over this direction and maybe two of them around this way, and ratchet strap these things tight to make sure I'm completely on. And then I'm going to come over here and file these just to make my life a little bit easier. And we're going to do a test fit on the bus. And when I'm sure these things are looking good, then what I'm going to try to do after that is to overcome a little bit of a screw up. I had marked the door where the hinges go on the other side, hinge side, right? And I forget if it was like 3 inches or 6 inches from the end, and the bottom end and the top end, and then the other ones evenly spaced. And where I planned and figured out where I wanted them, I marked the door. And if you can recall from earlier video, that there's screws holding the two 1x4s together, and I made sure that there were no screws in the way where the hinge screws were going to go. Well, now any markings are gone because I used the belt sander on the edge. Yeah, so now I'm going to have to guess the best I can, and you know, it's always something. Alright, so that's the plan. Today I wanted to leave here like 1 o'clock, right? So we got to be in Orlando at 4. It's about 2 hours and change. So I mean, if we left at 1, that would give us plenty of time to take a pit stop here and there. Maybe get lunch on the highway. Yeah. All right, I got this pretty much roughed out. It's very, very close to being perfectly flush. I used a coarse file, and the file marks don't really show up that much as long as I go with the extrusion marks here. Same thing here. So this will all get a good sanding and polishing. So that's exactly what we're shooting for right there. Nice clean ends. This one here has got a little bit of an overhang right there, but I left it because when I put the glue in this thing, I might have a hard time getting this flush. I don't know. So I left a little bit on these things. So we're going to give it a test fit. Wish me luck. Okay, we're in. So I moved the door all the way over to the left side, so we're just about touching, or we are touching right here. Got about a 1/16 here, about a 1/16 all the way up, and then the very top looks like we're touching, which
is fine, because we could fix that by trimming the door or trimming this piece. Now, let's look at, it should be sitting flat on the bottom. And actually, it's really close. It's a little high on this side, which means, let's go back to what Dad always said, the hinge side is the boss. So we got a good 3/16, and it's very, very straight. That's really the best thing I could see right now, because this is what gauges everything. So we could be possibly, yeah, just a slight amount of belly in the middle on the door, that is. Like the gap's wider right here, just by a hair. And again, I can fix that by trimming the door a tad, or trimming this piece of wood a tad. And what did we say we were here? We're a little bit wide of a gap on the left side, which is the preferred, actually, because you're only going to get sag out of this thing on the left side here, the opposite side of the hinge. So I think that's actually perfect. So what I could do with this, oh, we got to check the top. Let's see how the top is doing. Oh, my little step here. This door is just barely balanced in this opening. So, oh yeah, look at that. That's great. It's got 3/16. It means we need to go up about a 1/16 of an inch. Gap's a little wide here, so that's great. That's actually great, because I want to have, yeah, I want to have a little bit larger of a gap at the bottom to make room for some kind of seal that I can install on the bottom edge. All right. So you know what? I think what I'm going to do at this point is install the hinges and actually hang the door on the hinges. And that's a pretty big job, because what I got to do, this is going to be in 2 or 3 different phases of operation. First phase is I'm going to have to cut the aluminum openings where the hinges are going to go. And that's a whole thing in itself, right? Because we have to do that on the milling machine. And then I won't mortise the door at all. I'll just use the thickness of the aluminum for starters to place the hinges. I'll set the hinges, drill the door, put in the screws, and then we're going to come back here, shim the bottom of the door where we want the height, and then we're going to mark this piece of wood with the first hinge. I'll just probably pick the top one or the second from the top one and get one hinge installed, and then reinstall all this stuff all over again to make sure that we've got everything where we want it to be, height-wise. The height is going to be the trick, because if we're off after we've drilled the holes in this wood, then we're going to have to fill the holes and re-drill, and it's never going to be as good as it was in the first place. So yeah, we'll probably do it with the second to the top hinge, because the top hinge is going to be the most critical for keeping the sag out of the door. All right, all in all, this is great. Great news. I like what I'm seeing. So our gap is too wide here and too narrow here. So it's perfect. It's perfect. I mean, we're talking maybe a 32nd of an inch variation around here. Maybe a 32nd of an inch. I'm going to straighten this up down here where it's tight at the bottom and a hair tight at the top after I get the door hung. Then we'll know for sure where everything is sitting. Well, I'm trying to remember how I placed these hinges. And I was going through the motions, the same motions I went through last time. I just checked the space from the bottom of the door to the bottom of the hinge on my house, and it's like 6.5 inches. My first inclination was going 6 inches, but then space is a little on the far side, because honestly, the closer the hinges are to the end, the more mechanical advantage there is on the fighting the whole sag thing, if you know what I mean. The sag is going to occur when the top hinges try to pull out, and it's mostly that's where it happens. And then on where the bottom hinge wants to push in, what happens is it allows the door to sag on this side because of the weight on this side is pulling down. So the further that top hinge is to the top, the better job it can do to fight the sag. So anyway, I put it at 6 and the space is a little bit large, and then I said, well, what about 3 inches? And I'm basically probably going through the same thought patterns as I did the first time around. And so I put the hinges at 3. Here's my little woman. Hi.
And here's your daughter.
Hi, Amy. What's going on?
So, you called me a minute ago?
Yeah, I wanted to show you the door. It's too late.
Oh.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so back to this. So I put the hinge at 3 inches. Then I remembered that there's end grain from the 1x4s over here, and these 1x4s end at this pencil mark. So then I know I don't want screws going into the end grain, right? But I also don't want screws going too close to the end of this 1x4 that stops right here. So I figured that's like a reasonable distance. So what that does, it puts me at 5, and I'll bet you that's exactly what I came up with last time. So I did 5 from the top, 5 from the bottom, and then I evenly spread the hinges, and right now they're within like 1/8 of an inch or so, just eyeballing kind of pretty much. So that looks right. So now I'm going to refine all these measurements to make sure I'm exactly where I want to be, and I'm going to go ahead and scribe a line where I want to cut. So the cut is going to be, you know, how do I do this? Cut's going to be 1/8 of an inch in, right? Something like that. And I'm going to be removing this. And the depth, how far down I go, is determined by how far down I want the hinges to sit, which is a whole nother analysis to think about here, because the further down, the further out that the hinges are, it does two things. It allows the door to swing clear away from the hinge area, because you've got more distance from the pin to the door twice. So whatever the distance is from here to the door, and then from there to the door jamb, you know, if you got 1 inch, that's 2 inches. That means when the door is open, the door will be 2 inches away from the jamb. And that can help when you're trying to overcome an obstruction like what I have. So I would like that, but at the same time, now you've got more leverage on the screws because the hinge is further away from the door. Another thing that happens is the further away the hinge pin is away from the door, right, this height that we're talking about right here, it causes something to happen on the doorknob side. Instead of the door, I'm going to exaggerate this. There's my little woman again. Instead of the door opening out
and around, it starts to go in and around because of the displacement of the hinge pin. So now I'm going to sit here and think about all that and gauge what's going on here and decide on the height, and then I'll make my hinge layouts. And here's how the hinge is going to go. Alright, came out just like I wanted, but unforeseen. Well, kind of, it was foreseen, but I just was hoping for better. These screws are ending right frickin' dead center in the seam between the two 1x4s, which is not ideal. I mean, the wood is glued really, really well, so by all standards, that's going to be just as good as perfect. But I had already planned on putting an additional screw right here to give us some extra strength, so I'm not worried about that at all. Now, if you look, you can see we're not flush here because the hinges are thicker than 1/8 of an inch. So we will be putting a dado, not a dado, what do you call it, a mortise in the wood, so that way the gap will remain 1/8 of an inch between the door and the door jamb, right? Because really, when we close this hinge this way till they're parallel, that's the gap. Ideally, that's the gap between the door and the door jamb. If both of these leaves are flush, one's flush with the door jamb and the other one is flush with the door, so that's right at 1/8, which means, like I said, we're gonna have to mortise into the wood, but I'm gonna save that. First thing we're gonna do is I'm pretty much done for the day because I gotta take a shower. I mean, I could maybe work for another half an hour, but I don't want to rush. I want to think this through a little bit more, what I want to do. I mean, it's gorgeous, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and I mean, it's going to be a whole nother project in itself, drilling these holes. This is some really thick stainless, and then doing the counter bore. I got to figure out how I'm going to hold it in the vise. I might end up using toe clamps, but putting that extra screw in there would make me feel much better. Because all doors are kind of weak when it comes to the screws. Just about any house door you find, the screws have worked their way loose, or they're stripping out, or you know. And since this is going to be in a constant earthquake going down the road, I'm giving it my best shot. So yeah, mortising the wood is going to be actually pretty simple. I've done this a jillion times. You just take a razor knife and you cut your two lines, and we're basically going through the entire thickness of the door. So that's what makes it easy, right? I could actually do this with a router and just